Welcome to the first discussion panel episode of Black History Today podcast. We're here today to talk about some events. First, we would like to thank those of you who have already agreed to join the YouTube channel or who have listened to us on Spotify. We've noticed a huge uptick in that in the past few days, and I really want to thank everybody for that. With that, I will turn it over to my co-host, and then I'll bring up the first topic.
All right, what's up? I'm Doug. I'm going to be your one of your guides through this very interesting back and forth discussion. I said disgusting. I hope it's interesting, but we'll see. I guess we're gonna talk about. I'll let Chuck go for it. Go for it,
Yeah,
Chuck.
for sure. And I should have introduced myself. My name's Charles Terry. For those of you who listened to the first podcast episode, you know who I am. I have my BA in history and I have my PhD in the history of education. So today, with Black history in mind, the first thing I wanted to talk about was sort of before 1619. And while I think the debate around 1619 is very important, I've spent my life studying enslaved African Americans. That's what my dissertation is on. I think that is a debate we'll get to in future episodes. I really want to start a little bit to talk about why I think we need to start before 1619 and why I think it's strange that we don't. And why I don't think that our reasons for not doing so in either the high school or the college curriculum are really intellectually consistent or even logical. So, anyway, for those of you who listened to our first episode, you know that I covered Juan Garrido, who basically was the first Black person. He was an African who became a Spanish conquistador. For those of you who want to hear that story, I would strongly encourage you to either go to the YouTube channel or go to Spotify and listen to that first episode again. It was about 20 minutes long, so I won't recount all of that. But essentially, he was an African who either migrated or moved from the coast of West Africa to Portugal to Spain. He converted to Catholicism and he became basically a Spanish explorer conquistador. He ended up joining Ponce de Leon's expedition, which was the first expedition to really discover the continental coast of the United States. In 1513, they explored and landed at what we believe is St. Augustine, Florida today. And at that point in time, Juan Garrido became one of the first people, one of the first non-native people, I want to make sure we get that in, to really land, explore, be anywhere near the coast of the continental United States. You have Leif Erikson in 1000s up near Newfoundland. And then after that, a lot of your Spanish expeditions are to Puerto Rico, they're to Colombia, they're to Cuba, they're to a lot of the Caribbean. So this is really one of the first expeditions, the first expedition to land on what's the continental United States. And I don't understand why this isn't in our history books. I not only think it's Black or African American history, I think it's American history. And again, I just don't think that the reasons that we have for not covering it are consistent. Everyone's taught 1492. We don't start US history in 1619. We don't start American history in 1619. I think we do a better job of discussing some of the the complications, the contradictions, the brutality, the massacres, the disease, all of that sort of comes with Columbus to, the quote unquote, the New World. But it just makes no sense to me that Juan Garrido isn't in the history books. Again, we start before 1513. We start in 1492. Everyone knows who Ponce de Leon is. College students know, elementary school students know. So to me, it's just not logical to sort of exclude that from the U.S. history book. And I'll turn it back to Doug because I feel like I'm getting on my soapbox now. But anyway, yeah. So
No, it's great. I mean, what's wrong with getting on soapboxes?
I guess
Again,
that's
that's how
true,
things get changed,
isn't
correct?
it? Isn't it? Yeah. So I
Yeah, some of the
really
most prolific speakers were on soapboxes.
I guess that's true.
Yeah.
It really just bothers me that this is not part of the curriculum. I don't understand it. I again, I'm not acting like an expert, but I will tell you that I think that high school teachers have a much harder job because they have to teach more. My mom was a high school teacher, so I'm a little biased. They have to teach more students. They have to teach more continuously. They have to teach every day. And I think college professors have a tough job too, because you have to condense a lot of material into a short amount of time. But real quickly, I'm just gonna go for it, Doug. Yeah.
So if you're not an expert, my question is that who is?
Okay,
I believe you have your
I am
PhD,
I
so
am
I
an
think you've
expert.
spent enough
I
time
am
doing so.
I am an
Yeah.
expert. Thank
But
you. Go
I guess
ahead.
what would be your if you, let's just say, if you had a wish and you could
Yes.
wish the curriculum being taught,
Yes.
um, what
Yeah.
what would be your proactive advice for people to start doing, like, would it be homeschooling? Do you think that during maybe, Black History Month that we're currently in right now,
Yeah.
we can spend more time focusing, publishing more books, children's books, uh, pertaining to that specific thing? Like, what would be your insight on how we can possibly, if the system's not doing for us, how can we do for it?
That's an excellent question. And we'll talk about the debate over the African American Studies AP history course at the high school level in Florida. We'll talk about that in another episode. That's very important. That's a whole different episode. But I just bring that up briefly because I think that one thing that you sort of said yourself that I agree with is I do think it should start at home. I was reading an article the other day where a lot of African American parents and non-African American parents, just all parents, are sort of, especially in Florida, are using recent events as sort of a motivation to start teaching their kids history at home. And I do think that's important. I'm not a parent. I won't, I know other people are, but I do think that's important. I think my parents always stressed African American history in the home. So that would be my first take, is I do think that parents, most parents, in my opinion, are very educated, having taught education and history courses at the college level. I'm like not shocked. I'm always impressed and aware of how much students learn from their parents. Like I do think that it should start at home. My other two caveats are, given the length of the high school year, and again, this is something that needs to be done at the curriculum level. This is why you're seeing this debate come to the forefront. You cannot expect high school teachers to do things on their own. There's 25 to 30 students in the class. They're under state curriculum standards. They're not publishing the textbooks themselves. There's only so much they can do. But given the amount of days that we are in school as high school students in the United States, and given the fact that US history is a year-long course, there is absolutely no reason that Juan Guaido should not be taught in every high school in the United States. That's a very easy thing. And then
I agree with you.
yeah, and then the second thing I would say is, having taught at the college level, I understand how hard it is to get a college syllabus together, because you're teaching a course 1 to 2 days a month a month, excuse me, a week at best, for anywhere from 5 to 6 months at best. In the summer, it's even less. But basically, every single college, every major university, I won't go through the whole curriculum, but has something that's generally at this point History 151 and 152. One of those is America up until 1877. And the second one is America from 1877 to the present. Again, I cannot make this generalization, but I know, because I've looked through college professor syllabus, almost all of that 151 courses that's America to 1877 has either a first week or a first and second week course that is called Spanish exploration, and conquering, whatever you want to call it, discovery of the new world. Obviously, we use different terms, and everybody has a limited amount of time to work with, and everybody has to do their best to tell the entire story of what happens in a week or two. But I still think that if you can cover the fact that there was Spanish exploration into the northern hemisphere and into North America, into the Western Hemisphere and into North America, you should have time to cover Juan Guaido. And that will bring me to my second point, and my second issue with 1619 is 1619 is not the first time that African slaves are brought into America, and we'll be covering that in a future episode. Your first quote unquote North American settlement is Leif Erikson, like I said, in about 1000 in Newfoundland. Then you have St. Augustine, which we talked about with Ponce de Leon. And then in 1527, the Spanish start another settlement at San Miguel. Sorry, work with my Spanish here. San Miguel de Gualdap, which is basically in modern day Florida, and they bring with them like 600 people. There are Spanish. There are Spanish people there. There are enslaved Africans there. There are enslaved Native Americans there. And what happens in this settlement is basically there's a mutiny, and there's two sort of some of the Spanish lieutenants mutiny and take over the colony. They're then caught and imprisoned, and what happens is the enslaved Africans rise up, burn part of the settlement, and disappear and join a native tribe. And that's history, and we don't cover that. Again, we're going to do a whole episode on this in the future. And again, I think 1619 is essential, but I just think it's a little odd that we teach, like I said, Christopher Columbus. We teach Ponce de Leon. We teach all
Christopher
of these things.
Columbus, that is really not true. We
There you
still
go.
teach the we still
We don't
teach the
exactly.
what is it, fictional version of Christopher Columbus.
There you go. There you go. We don't even cover that completely. And again, it's a lot to cover. I get it. But you just have to tell the whole story. And no one, not no one, because I'm overgeneralizing, most people know about Roanoke. And Roanoke is a lost colony. Roanoke doesn't endure. And that's 1585. And we teach that. That's in the history books. But we don't teach about the Spanish settlement in Georgia, San Miguel de Gualdap, even though it's like the third settlement in North America and like the second settlement in the continental United States. And there's no reason not to teach it. So I just think that it's not about an agenda, it's about telling complete history. And to not tell the story that the first enslaved African that first of all, that the first Africans in North America were not enslaved. It's Juan Garrido, who's basically a Spanish explorer and conquistador, with everything that goes with that, including repression of native peoples there.
Exactly.
And that the first enslaved Africans in the United States, the first African Americans, rebel successfully.
Exactly.
I just think it's inexcusable not to teach. And again, if we didn't have Columbus in our textbooks and even taught at the college level, he has to be. You cannot teach American history without starting with the Spanish expeditions to North America. We all know it. We all do it. And
It's actually really interesting that you would say that too, because I always find it quite interesting and a bit, excuse me, a bit frustrating that history, especially Black history, is always taught with the first enslaved Americans as if there were not
exactly,
non-enslaved Black Americans, excuse me, Black Americans or Black
exactly,
people, the diaspora in general, that existed here and that came here through the ships with Spain and all the rest of that stuff. We always just assume that Black life or the African diaspora touched bases here through the entrance of slavery. That's not that's
exactly,
not the case. And
exactly.
we highly forget that a lot of those people that were here before that were not enslaved actually made a settlement, actually did things, actually, helped build the land. But again, our first introduction to it is always in chains. And like as you were saying too, with the exploration aspects, it's very interesting that we really don't we don't put much emphasis. Everything is told through the eyes of Spain,
Mm-hmm.
everything is told through the eyes of Europe, and we don't kind of have a reversed perspective as well, as far as a week, because these are the Spain perspective and the European perspective are the things that we learn pretty consistently throughout 1 through 12, and you really have to go to college to really explore the other aspects.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I you nailed it. And it just drives me crazy. Just tell the complete story. And again, it's not on the teachers, but you have less time to do this in college and it should still be done. There is no reason when we're putting all American high school students and even elementary, but especially high school through at least an entire, calendar year, not semester of US history, that we don't have time to cover this. It's just insane. So,
But even
that's our
teaching your
first
kids
topic.
this, it's privilege. You would have had to have this information to sit here and really teach your children that. And again, that's what we're talking about. Most impoverished communities, They don't have the time for this because they're working 2 or 3 jobs. If they're working 2 or 3 jobs,
Facts.
just keeping the lights on, just eating are their main focuses. You have to be at a privilege, a privilege just to know or just to be able to explore, a wider canvas of these thoughts and these aspects. And kind of what you were saying is that our schools need to do a better job at introducing reoccurringly introducing, these perspectives and these aspects. Nobody's saying, oh, yeah, you have to teach all of this for a whole grade. Nobody's saying that. But just
Yep.
as we are introduced to Shakespeare, just as we are introduced to um, Mark Twain, over and over and over again throughout our academic lives, K through 12,
Yep.
these things should also be introduced.
Absolutely. You nailed it. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. And I think that to me, I won't say more important because again, I think that the debate that's going on around 1619 is essential. We're going to do several future episodes on that, but I think that that's equally as important. And yeah, exactly. You have Black History Month. You have your high school year is what, 9 months long. There's no reason anyone should graduate taking an entire year of U.S. history from high school anywhere in the United States and not have at least spent, not, I'll say 2 to 3 days, but really at least a week on this.
Dude, and
There's
we
there's
definitely got to
time.
get
There's
into
at least time for a week. Go ahead. Yeah, go
definitely
ahead.
got to get into eugenics as well too. And I think eugenics is one of the most fascinating topics to talk about. The 1% rule, and how the 1% rule was so heinous that not even the Nazis wanted to adopt it. Literally, when Hitler and the Nazis were looking for a way to present the pure race, to figure out the way that the pure race was going to continue to exist and kind of be published in Germany, they briefly looked at the outliner for the one drop, not 1%, but one drop race of the Americas, and said,
Exactly.
"Oh no, this is way too extreme. We can't do that." Just absolutely nuts. We definitely got to talk about that as well too.
I agree, and again, we have so many topics for future episodes, but I agree. I think that that's a huge one, and I think that it gets to exactly what we do want to get to on this podcast, which I think people of all races, of all nationalities, and again, I don't want to overgeneralize, but many people, I've gone to a major university with people from other countries, um, and I think what you're saying is true, is that for a lot of people, both outside the United States and within the United States, the idea of how race and blackness operates in America can be confusing because the US has a unique approach to race. And I'm not saying we're the only country that does, but we really do. And people need to sort of understand that and accept that, and then we can go from there. And that's not taking a shot at anybody, which we'll do if it's necessary, but that's just a fact. And exactly, the
Well, we
one
have to
drop,
take a shot at ourselves as
we
well
do.
too.
That's exactly, if
We
we're going
we
to be,
are we are the media cornucopia of the
there you go.
world.
There you go. And
Media, as far as coming from our country, is the thing that's the most sought out and the thing that's the most looked at.
yeah,
Movies are made here. Movies are the medium. They are the modern day gods and goddesses. Greek pantheon. If we're just using comparisons of everything. What we do, the stories that we tell, the documentaries that we present to the world are very much the things that people are going to absorb and take to face value to say, hey, this is what happened.
absolutely, absolutely, and yeah, so that's going to bring us to our second topic. But yeah, I agree. The one drop rule, and especially the emphasis on the one drop rule in the legal system as a legal concept, repeatedly, even through the 1960s, it matters, and it matters because it's codified into law through legal decisions. And again, I know that there are people that don't like to hear that or will fight back on that, and they're welcome to do so, but it's important to understand how that one drop rule has worked, how it's gone from 1/8 to 1/4 to one drop and back and forth, and we'll cover all that. But the fact that that's legally codified into our legal system, and legal scholars know that, whether they want to cover it or not, they know it, really does have an
Post it.
impact. It's exactly, you
We
can
will,
look
and
this up.
we will also be sharing, all of our findings, all of our official findings. We will cite and quote all of the information that we're basically giving you in I don't know, I
So
can't
go
think,
ahead.
but it down in the information box, I guess, for lack of a
Absolutely.
better word.
Absolutely. And on the first podcast episode, I know I brought up a couple of historical sources. I will go back and add those in the description as well. But Doug's right. But yeah, you hinted at our second topic. I know we're running a little short on time today. So thank you, everybody. This is our first episode. We're excited to be here. But yeah, I agree. You're bringing up another issue, which is sort of how Black history is portrayed in the media, and especially in popular culture. And again, I know that you're probably going to expand on this a little more than me. I think that you have more of a background in media, certainly in acting and movies and things like that. So we did want to sort of bring that up as our second topic today. I know you've seen the new Will Smith movie, Emancipation. I'm very
Yes.
excited to hear your reactions to this film and your thoughts on that.
Um. So, Emancipation. I will say this: it was a very good movie. It is a positive and it's a negative. The one plight that I had with Will Smith and the way that he was promoting it was he gave a interesting conversation that he had with his daughter, because his daughter said, "Hey, Dad, does the world really need another slave movie?"
Hmm.
And Will Smith said, "This is not a slave movie. Trust me, I would not make another slave movie. This is a movie about freedom." Um, I really appreciated the approach and the way that he's trying to shift the narrative so that people see another aspect of the movie. But the fact of the matter was, it was a slavery movie. Now, that saying that it was a slavery movie, it was definitely a different slavery movie. The slavery movie was more from the perspective of the actual enslaved person trying to escape, what the enslaved person was feeling through those aspects, the aspects of understanding, hey, the slaves were just freed, that enslaved person talking with the other slaves, and less of the narrative of togetherness. Like, if you look at the older slavery movies like Glory, excellent movie, excellent performances, but a lot of those comparisons were kind of the getting along, everybody getting together. You really did not understand the mindset of the slave. It's the slave themselves, or the enslaved themselves. It was kind of a utopic, synergetic back and forth between the two. And I would say more of a white narrative, because we were literally hearing Matthew Broderick in the background. Um,
Wow.
if I remember correct, but he was kind of narrating certain aspects of it, so it was really more from his perspective. Obviously, when he got to know the slaves more, then he started to kind of have more of a enslaved, um, I don't know, empathic, in depth type of analysis with the slaves, but nothing was really specifically from them. And I don't want to, ruin the movie for a lot of people, but they did
You're good.
introduce a lot of very interesting aspects. At the very end, the slaves, or the enslaved people or the regiment that saved him,
Mm.
they showed a very interesting was a very interesting mosh that kind of flips what enslaved people in America were. We always think it's just the generalization of the slang, or the what's the vernacular? What's the slang vernacular that we use? I can't think of it.
Not Ebonics.
Ebonics,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
cut up. Oh, you was doing this and you was doing that.
Yeah,
When we completely have forgotten that, there were a lot of slaves that came from a lot of different places. Some spoke
absolutely.
French, some spoke
Absolutely.
patois, all
Excellent
kinds
point.
of other stuff. The diaspora
Excellent point.
is quite large, and you
Excellent
actually
point.
got to see that reflected in American culture as well too, which we don't get that a lot, right? It's all you
Facts.
always think, yes, master, yes, sir. You always think of the inferior. Oh, this is how it is to be black. That's the definition of black is cut up. I can't speak
Yeah.
because only enslaved people are not educated and all the rest of that stuff. And we keep forgetting that there were a lot of enslaved people that were very educated, a lot of enslaved people that, despite a lot of the situations that they were strung in, they had, I say this very lightly, but
Yeah. Yep.
advantages in the teachings that they had. But yeah, I don't know. In comparison to that, what was your take on Glory?
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks everybody. We're going to also cover that in a future episode. Again, thank you everybody for joining us today. Emancipation sounds fascinating to me and I can't wait to see it. Yeah, so I think Glory is a really good I really enjoy Glory. I think that it's an example of a movie done well. I think that for the time period it came out in, it's very important. I think that it covers something that people again struggled with at the time, which is that African Americans have fought in every war America's ever had back to its inception. I do think that Glory, as good as it is, though, I do think that it does have some of those same issues, which again, some of this is just because directors can't cover everything. I get it. But I think that it does have some of those same issues that you're speaking of truncating the experience of enslaved African Americans, of truncating their actual service, and of not really covering everything that happened. And sometimes in that movie, operating strictly from a overly white lens as opposed to a balanced lens where they really look at the experiences of the enslaved, formerly enslaved soldiers, some of whom were enslaved and some of whom weren't. I thought the movie did a good job on that too, with the Andre Brower character showing not everybody who joined these regiments was enslaved. So I think that it's a good starting point. I think it's a great movie. It's probably one of my favorite quote unquote military movies. And I think that for the time, it's very progressive. I think my issue is that I don't feel like pop culture or historical movies have advanced at all from Glory. So that's my biggest issue with that film, is that I think that some of the issues that are there continue to exist even until today.
Much
And
like
I
historical curriculum.
Exactly. And I think that as opposed to, and again, I have no problem. I'll critique Edward Zwick all day. But as opposed to critiquing Edward Zwick and that movie from what the very early, I think that movie's 90. I'll have to look it up. It's either 90 or 91. But instead of critiquing, especially what happened in a movie in 1990, 91, I think that's a bigger problem that we haven't progressed at all in terms of how Hollywood treats um, slavery.
1989.
Thank you. My bad. I was off by 1 year, 1989. Yeah, I think that and we're in 2023 now. Time's flying, but I think that that's what to me is just inexcusable, is that there's been no progress since then. So
But it
again,
was
I'll
released in 1990
Oh,
to the
hey, I'm on point. There we
got it.
go.
You got it.
Got it on the nose. But yeah, that's a bigger problem to me. Yeah, I think it's an overly white lens in some cases. I don't think it tells enough of the entire history of the regiment. I think that they again fictionalize a lot of it. But I wish it was a little more balanced. But again, I think it's one of the best military movies out there. And I just think that between 1989 and 2023, you know, Hollywood, again, I don't mean to be overly general here, but Hollywood or movies or the movie industry or studios or directors or writers or all of the above could do a better job of showing a more full and balanced picture of American history in the antebellum period and just the lives of enslaved African Americans altogether. And that's why I was so interested in your thoughts on Emancipation. Again, I don't want to talk about a movie I haven't seen, but I will. I know that Emancipation, I do know it's for all of you who think of enslaved African Americans, you know that picture that you've seen where you see an enslaved African American with his back turned to you and his back is just crisscrossed with scars everywhere. I know the movie, that man's name is Peter Gordon. I know it's loosely based on his life. I know
Yes.
Antoine Fuqua is a very good director, and that's all I know about it historically. So that's why I was interested in your opinion on it.
Yes. Historically, like I said, it was very fascinating from the sense of the point of view. It was a point of view that was never necessarily taken. Unfortunately, it was another slave movie. It was an updated slave movie, as you were saying, in certain aspects. It was more of a it's historic, but more emotional. It was emotional connection, and not an emotional connection on the factors of what we have seen in the past, kind of.
Yeah, you're making total sense. That makes total sense to me. So yeah, we'll keep updating that. I will see Emancipation. I will have an even longer talk on that in the future. Again, and we're definitely going to do an entire episode discussing the Florida curriculum, and we'll also talk about pop culture. This is just sort of how we're going to do these discussion episodes. We'll have a historical discussion, and then we'll have a popular culture. A lot of movies, a lot of Hollywood. We'll bring in some books, but we sort of want to balance these half and half. So yeah, I will really want to thank Doug for being here. Again, I'll upload a future episode specifically talking about that first enslaved revolt in 1527. For those of you who listened to the Juan Garrido episode, it'll be like that. And Doug and I are going to work to keep bringing these discussions to you. We'll put the link to both the YouTube channel and the Spotify in the description. We're working on getting this up on Stitcher, Apple iTunes, all those other services as well. And I just really want to thank everybody who's liked us on LinkedIn, who's made an effort to leave a comment and who's really supported us. Because as this show grows and continues, we're going to keep honing our crafts and we're going to keep bringing interesting episodes to you. For people who do have suggestions, again, please feel free to leave those in the comments on Spotify or YouTube. You can always leave us a review. That's a huge help. If you are on YouTube, please like and subscribe to us. That helps enormously. And yeah, we're just going to kind of keep progressing through Black history, not only during Black History Month, but into March and April as well. And we're looking forward to bigger and better things to come. So I'll turn it back over to Doug. But again, I'm Charles Terry. I really appreciate all of those of you who have supported us so far. The channel is going to keep growing and improving from here. So any final words, Doug?
No, I do want to. No, no, we're good. I'm good for over here.
Are you sure? You can have more.
No,
The people
absolutely
want to
fine.
hear from you. All right.
Absolutely
All
fine. No, no, no,
right.
no. It's just a startup, so we'll get into it. We'll get into it.
There we go. Well, thank you again, everybody, for listening to this episode. Again, subscribing on YouTube helps enormously. Likes help. Listening and downloading on Spotify and leaving leaving a notification there helps as well. But we'll also get our social media up and running over the next few weeks, and we'll make sure to put that in the description of Spotify and in the description on the YouTube channel as well. And with that, I hope that everybody is having a wonderful day, a wonderful Black History Month, and we look forward to seeing you all on the next episode. Thank you.